Hello YouTubers, this video goes out to a user by the name of Inspiring Philosopher regarding his explanation of the ontological argument. Okay, the ontological argument follows as such. Premise 1. It is possible that God exists. Premise 2. If it is possible that God exists, then God exists in some possible worlds. Premise 3. If God exists in some possible worlds, then God exists in all possible worlds. Premise 4. If God exists in all possible worlds, then God exists in the actual world. And finally, premise 5. If God exists in the actual world, then God exists. Firstly, I'd like to say I like this video. Not because he's right about not being able to debunk this particular argument, but because of how he manages to defend premise 1 by redefining God as a maximally great being. This maximally great being cannot do the logically impossible, therefore making it theoretically possible for such an entity to exist. I would imagine this guy would be pleased. However, from here the argument falls down. He mentions necessity and then attempts to prove this with scripture, citing specifically Colossians 16. Now, Colossians 16 states, "For him, by him, all things were created, that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones, dominions, or principalities, or powers, all things were created through him and for him." This evidence for necessity doesn't hold up, due to the simple fact that the Bible is a book, and in itself can't be used as real evidence for anything. Science over the years has made many discoveries that negate the necessity of a creator. However, I'm not making this video in an attempt to prove the non-existence of God. This would be a pointless exercise because I can't, and furthermore, nobody can. Although I have no belief in any God due to the lack of evidence for its existence, I and any other logical person will concede that it is possible, though the odds are infinitesimally small, that a God could exist. Okay, so you mentioned in your video that the only argument against these 5 premises can be with premise 1, as the other premises use modal logic and effectively can't be refuted. I have to strongly disagree with this, as we can clearly see that with your definition of God as a maximally great being, premise 1 is actually the only one that does hold up and can't be refuted. It's the other 4 premises that don't hold up under scrutiny. We begin with premise 2. If it is possible that God exists, then God exists in some possible worlds. Now, you explain possible worlds as hypothetical. Now, just this description refutes the argument. A hypothetical world is by definition not real. It is just an imagined place, and as such you have no evidence of its existence outside of the mind. This is no different to someone imagining that there are an extra 2 moons orbiting the Earth. Just imagining it doesn't make it real. Okay, next, premise 3. If God exists in some possible worlds, then God exists in all possible worlds. I don't really have any arguments with this particular premise. Basically, the nature of the God that you've described would say, yes, this premise does hold up, but the fact remains that we're still only talking about hypothetical worlds. Premise 4. If God exists in all possible worlds, then God exists in the actual world. Okay, you said that the actual world is included as one of the possible worlds. This doesn't work at all. As soon as you imagine the actual world to be a part of these possible worlds, you cease to draw the line between fantasy and reality. For this premise to be accurate, all of the possible worlds would have to cease being hypothetical and magically become real. But as with premise 2, you can't just imagine something into existence. And finally, premise 5. If God exists in the actual world, then God exists. Now, on its own, yes, this premise does hold up. If God exists in the actual world, then yes, he would exist. But since premises 2, 3 and 4 don't hold up under scrutiny, premise 5 effectively becomes redundant within this argument, due to the fact that the argument cannot provide proof of the existence of God. To end this video, I'd like to make a request that if you or anyone else arguing for the existence of God, creation, or any other religion-related ideas want to actually challenge anybody, then please come up with something new instead of rehashing old arguments with a modern twist. Okay then, bye for now.